WWE has some of my favorite eras, and I'm going to be giving you my top favorites from the weakest era to the best era, like the worst to the best. Now, starting in as number one for the worst era, in my opinion, was probably the Golden Era. I'm not going to lie, the Golden Era was kind of boring. There wasn't really much progression in the Golden Era besides Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant. I mean, that was probably the best match out of the Golden Era. And you got a lot of good legends from the Golden Era. You get, you got quite a few legends, but a lot of them died due to the fact that just most wrestlers in general, they really have short careers. And they get injured a lot, and a lot of the legends die due to steroids, or due to the negative effects of taking anabolic steroids. And they get, heart attacks, so they die. But the Golden Era was probably, I don't know, it wasn't really my favorite era. I've been watching a few videos of the Golden Era. Those are like from the 80s, like 70s, 80s kind of era, like, during the 70s, 1970s, and 1980s. I didn't really get into it that well. I mean, even a lot of the gimmicks weren't, like, intriguing to me at all, besides Hogan 80s. Hogan 80s was pretty much that era. That's pretty much it for that one. Now, the next one, my favorite era after the Golden Era, well, actually the weakest era, the next weakest era, in my opinion, has got to be, I don't know, it's between the, I give it between the PG era and the new generation era. I don't know what to decide between those two, but I'm probably going to have to lean more towards the PG era, because, I mean, during the PG era, there wasn't really that much greatness. That's the era we're currently in, but we're trying to get out of the PG era. The PG era is, everything is all less than PG-13. We got to make it child appropriate, so then kids can watch it at home. I mean, the gimmicks are great, in my opinion. I really love the gimmicks of the PG era. They're funny, but however, the problem is that they really released a lot of good WWE superstars, and then a lot of them went on to like TNA Impact. Like, how can you release Mr. Kennedy for once? That guy had a really good gimmick, Mr. Kennedy, and then you release the whole ECW roster, which is really the negative side effects of the PG era. Like all of ECW is gone, and they went over to TNA Impact, and that sucks. I really like the New Day, however, the Shield, the Nexus, the return of Evolution was awesome. There was a lot of good wrestlers. I mean, the problem is that too much John Cena was taking over the PG era, and I didn't really like it that they made John Cena too good. Like, he was pretty much the focus of the PG era. He's the face of the PG era, okay? That's why I wanted Seth Rollins to make a change onto this era, and I don't see much changes going on due to the fact that he had to get knee surgery. CM Punk didn't live the hype for that, and he went on to MMA, but he was one of my favorite wrestlers. They got a lot of good divas, too. I mean, I really like the divas. It feels like the divas, in my opinion, I feel like the divas are getting somewhat better and somewhat worse. It's kind of tough. But, I mean, you got Paige and all them. And, but majority of it is just like, come on, I want a bunch of returning superstars. I don't really care for new superstars as often. Besides, I mean, the Wyatts are awesome, too. I really like their gimmick. Now, the next era after that is obviously, in my opinion, the New Generation Era. Now, the New Generation Era was from, because the PG era was from like 2008 or so. I think it was 2008, 2009 to what it's on right now. But the New Generation Era is right where from 91 to 96. The beginning of the New Generation Era wasn't as good, in my opinion, till towards the end of it. But it introduced to you a lot of new superstars that ended up becoming like the greatest legend of all time. Like Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels pretty much, oh man, he buried everyone in the New Generation era. His Sweet Chin music, oh man, nobody could stop the Mr. Showstopper during that era. And his, oh man, his theme is amazing. Like, dun 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 dun, I think I'm cute. I know I'm sexy. I got the looks. Like, I'm just a sexy boy. Sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. Boy toy. Like, dude, oh man. I don't know. Like, even Bret Hart just didn't live. Like, Bret Hart wasn't even on Shawn Michaels' level. Shawn Michaels was just, I mean, just because Bret Hart was the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. I mean, that was a great rivalry overall, in my opinion. Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart. But, oh man, Shawn Michaels completely, I don't know, Mr. Sexy Boy completely shitted on Bret Hart, in my opinion. But yeah, and also, I think Triple H was in it, or was he in the Attitude Era? I can't remember. I think he was somewhat towards the end of the New Generation era, coming into the Attitude Era, but his gimmick was kind of weird. He kind of played, well, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, he played as like a butler kind of character, kind of like how Damian Sandow started. If you guys don't know him, he kind of played as the, you know, the butler guy, the rich guy, but yeah, but so many good superstars that were introduced, but now let's get on to the next era that I think is my next favorite era, Ruthless Aggression Era, guys. Okay, so the Ruthless Aggression Era was when I was a kid. I kind of grew up with the Ruthless Aggression Era. I didn't really grow up with the Attitude Era, but the Ruthless Aggression Era is what I grew up in, and I really love that era, in my opinion. This was my personal opinion. The Ruthless Aggression Era was just, oh man, so many great superstars. But there was also the down effects, was kind of the fall of the WWE ratings, because the Attitude Era was like the hype of the ratings, and then this was kind of like the fall due to the fact that Chris Benoit have done some horrible things, and so did Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero pretty much, you know, he took steroids, and then he died from it, and then Chris Benoit went crazy, took steroids, killed his family, like strangled his son and his wife, and then hung himself. Like that, oh man, like, oh, I don't even know what was up with that. Like, jeez. And then WWE had to do whatever they can to cover that up. But, you know, you can't really cover it when it was already exposed. And so, I mean, but still, the Ruthless Aggression Era, in my opinion, was one of the greatest eras of all time. The blood looked more realistic, and just so many great superstars. So many great matches I could remember. There was the Evolution. Triple H was kind of like the face of the Ruthless Aggression Era. You know, the game. Time to play the game. I mean, you had Bill Goldberg, too. You just had so many great wrestlers. The Rock at the end, you know, like, well, The Rock kind of like left during the Ruthless Aggression Era. Or like, he kind of left towards the middle, and I think he left towards the middle. But he's my favorite wrestler of all time. I don't give a fuck what you all think, but he's my favorite wrestler of all time. Due to the fact that he can talk on the mic. He can really, like, The Rock by far is probably the best mic talker of all time. The most electrifying of all sports entertainment. I know you can't really take him seriously in his movies, but this guy whoops some serious ass, man. Roman Reigns cannot compare to The Rock. People are trying to build up Roman Reigns to the hype, but he needs to improve his mic skills. I mean, he can just be a badass and all. Like here's the thing about WWE. You can be all badass you like in WWE, but if you are not good on the mic, if you cannot hype up the crowd, then you suck. Your contract is not going to last. I can tell you that. You can be like JTG, who just, you know, he has a contract, but he's not really wrestling at all. He's not really at the match. But still, yeah. Now, on to my favorite era of all time is the Attitude Era. I played WWE 2K13. That was the first 2K game that came out. Before it was SmackDown versus Raw. But now they had a fuse at WWE 2K13. And The Attitude Era was 97 to 2001, I think. But that was probably the best era, in my opinion, due to the fact that they had they had by far the greatest superstars of all time. They had Mankind, Rock and Sock. This was the fall. This was kind of like WCW. It was tied up with WWF. This is WWF, not WWE, okay? This is WWF, World Wrestling Federation. Now, this is when freaking WCW was like on the hype, and then WWF was down here, and then all of a sudden WCW took a big fall to the ground. WWF skyrocketed to the ceiling, and then they really put WCW out of business, and then they went in to go on to TNA Impact. What's his face? I can't remember his name. Not Kevin Nash. Eric Young, no. Jeff Jarrett created TNA. He's the founder, but he used to be a WCW champion, WCW superstar. So yeah, Vince McMahon owned him, basically, is what I'm saying. So Vince McMahon pretty much owns TNA, in my opinion. I mean, he should own TNA. It would make more sense. He needs to buy out all the superstars. But, and so that's pretty much what happened. It created a bunch of feuds. Just the ratings were so high on WWF, people would rather watch it than watch the Super Bowl. Okay, that's how hype it was. Like, people would rather go to pay-per-views than go to any other thing. Like, they were so hyped on WWF. I mean, if I was a kid, like, my dad told me how hyped WWF was. Like, he was like my age during the WWF era, and he, like, all his friends were just hyped up about it. And like, oh man, The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin had like the greatest feud of all time. They're like, man, even Vince McMahon got involved. And it's funny because The Rock, I think, was WWF. He had the WCW belt. Then Stone Cold was WCW. He had the WWF belt. Now that is crazy. That's funny. They had each other's rosters belts. And so I don't know if they had to do a trade-off or something like that. But The Rock was, man, he was awesome. This was after he became the Nation of Domination. And there's just, Undertaker was awesome too. I mean, he had a great gimmick. There's just so many great superstars that the Attitude Era have. So many great matches, just so many great stuff that no other era could possibly achieve. In my opinion, I don't think WWE right now could ever become what it used to be. They can bring back as many superstars as they can, but they all look like shit when they come back. I've noticed that. Like, D-Generation X, they tried bringing back Road Dogg and Billy Gunn from the Attitude Era. They look like crap. I'm telling you, like, these guys need to get back on the roids. I mean, that's when WWF, I meant, they were all juiced up. Like, they were... Oh man, they were all on steroids. Even Vince McMahon himself takes steroids. Like these wrestlers had to like look all juiced up to perform. Nowadays they kind of have to look more natural because, you know, they're all into, they have to look more natural to perform. But to me, I don't know, the looks are all everything. And the divas were fine too. Like, they were good looking. Yeah, like Trish Stratus, Sable, Stacy Kibler, just like so many of that. But pretty much that's all I want to discuss of for today. Go ahead, leave a comment below your top favorite WWE/WWF eras. Drop me a like if you haven't subscribed. This is JJD Uchiha, and you all have an awesome night.